A real crime. In a series of podcasts, I want you to travel down some lonely roads with me. These are the roads I traveled with families who never got to say goodbye to loved ones. These family members were fated to live the rest of their lives waiting and wondering. I will begin this series with unsolved murders, but I will also revisit cases that include arrests because aspects of the case are worth re-examining. I wrote these stories when I worked as a reporter for the Charleston Gazette. I appreciate you joining me today. I want to explain how a man who thought he was too clever to be caught molesting his students faced justice at last. Episode 28, Finally Stopped. Even though a child died in his custody without a criminal charge against him, members of the Fayette County Board of Education believed they had to return Edgar Friedrichs Jr. to the classroom. He even wanted to return to Beckwith Elementary School, where Jeremy Bell was once a student. Bell died in Friedrichs' cabin on the New River. Board staff denied this request, but he was allowed to teach in a different school with a new set of students. Bell's family grieved for the loss of their son and grew frustrated that no one was ever held responsible for their son's death. Years passed and the family hired a private detective. Dan Barber started his investigation and would later say he found victims at each school where Friedrichs taught or served as a principal. None of the students had ever turned to authorities on their own. Barber also found that some Fayette County parents had complained unsuccessfully about Friedrichs. Just as pedophile priests have been moved from parish to parish if they're discovered, Barber said if parents complained, Friedrichs was moved to a new school. Barber said Friedrichs wanted handsome, athletic boys who were approximately 11 years old. He also wanted the boys to be smart. One former Beckwith Elementary School student told me that in the clarity of hindsight, he believed that Friedrichs wanted the challenge of pursuing someone smart. Barber said these were the golden boys. Friedrichs showered these boys with attention and gifts. Barber said Friedrichs went undetected in 2 states for years. Barber always believed that Friedrichs had more victims than anyone imagined. He also said teaching and coaching are dream jobs for pedophiles. Barber turned over the results of his investigation to a trooper at the Oak Hill Detachment of the West Virginia State Police. After receiving Barber's report, Trooper B.L. Mankins followed up with his own investigation in 2001. Mankins brought his findings to a grand jury that returned a multi-count indictment that named Friedrichs as a sexual abuser of some of his former students. But Jeremy Bell's death was not a part of the proceedings. Former Assistant Fayette County Prosecutor Tom Steele and former Fayette County Prosecutor Paul Blake brought the case to trial. In a pretrial hearing, Steele argued that he should be allowed to present testimony from former students, even though Friedrichs was not charged with any crimes against those former students. Under the doctrine of similar acts, Steele wanted to show jurors the pattern of Friedrichs' behavior. Friedrichs' lawyer objected. He said jurors should not hear from people whom Friedrichs was never charged with molesting. Fayette County Circuit Judge John Hatcher agreed that some of the former students could testify if their experiences were close in time to Bell's death. That eliminated a man from Pennsylvania who was willing to testify. As a result of the ruling, Friedrichs' 2 children had to testify to counter what one of his former students said about their camping trip together. Friedrichs' children testified that nothing unusual happened in the pop-up camper they stayed in during a Virginia vacation. They also testified that they had a normal childhood. When Friedrichs' daughter took the stand, she brought a scrapbook of pictures to demonstrate they had a normal childhood. But the former student testified Friedrichs made him and Friedrichs' 2 children drink a bitter Kool-Aid-like drink. Later, the man said Friedrichs tried to rape him. Friedrichs was never charged with this alleged assault. Steele told jurors the case was about a violation of trust, and Edgar Friedrichs violated it. Jurors convicted Friedrichs in 2002 on sex charges. Hatcher sentenced him to a minimum of 31 years in prison. Friedrichs appealed his conviction and refused to surrender his teaching license. I'm sure he thought he could win the appeal and go back to the classroom. He's filed several appeals unsuccessfully, and his teaching license was in time revoked. The private investigator the Bell family hired, as well as people familiar with the case, believe Friedrichs could have been stopped many years earlier in his career. If Friedrichs had been stopped, a bright child, Jeremy Bell, could still be alive. Thanks for listening. Thanks to Brenda Pinnell for her great technical skills. Please join me next Wednesday for a new episode of A Real Crime by Susan Williams.